Hello, everybody, and welcome into week 9 of the SFA weekly roundup. Thank you guys all for watching this series. I actually just recorded a full 20-minute video for this week, and it did not record my audio. So we're going to give this another go. But yeah, week 9, lots to go over. So let's get back into it here. So week 9 games. First up is Iowa State handed Nebraska their second straight loss and an upset victory. 23-20. It looks like their defense is finally back on track. Maryland took out Penn State, actually triggering Penn State to make a quarterback change. They are benching the rookie Terrell Pryor, putting back in their starting quarterback, and the Terps went off. They scored 27 in the second quarter. Easily the worst season for the Terps in recent memory, but definitely a good win there. Baylor, once again, putting up like 60 plus. This offense is potent. They have contributors all over the field, and they're well on their way to a fifth straight CFP appearance. Michigan State, they continue to roll, this time against Indiana, and McBurnfinger, last week's Heisman leader, 2 touchdowns for him. Minnesota gets back on track. They had 3 straight losses, and they beat Tulane to get back on track here. Kansas is doing well. Duke actually took down Georgia Tech. This might be the lowest of the low for Georgia Tech here. Definitely not this kind of season they were hoping for after 9 wins last year. And then Buffalo, maybe the win of his career. He takes out ranked Miami, Ohio, on the back of Apollo Ames, who actually had a 73-yard rushing touchdown. His time expired in the second quarter. No throwing touchdowns for Arch Manning, but still a huge victory for him. Arizona State continues to roll. Tennessee gets a close victory at the end. They held off Alabama when it mattered, and they are now up to a SFA leading 8 wins. East Carolina continues to take care of business behind 1, 2, 3 Heimlich Heisenberg touchdowns, showing you why he's the best wide receiver in the country. Iowa loses to Northwestern. Ohio State still takes care of business. Florida State gets back in the win column. Wyoming actually gets a win over some of these new user teams coming in this week. Louisiana Tech stays unbeaten. BYU gets back to 500, and just a little something to watch out for. Cobbleberry is an SFA wide receiver. 2 touchdowns this week. He is actually having himself a great season. He might be a dark horse for Team of the Year wide receiver. Arkansas is keeping bowl eligibility alive. Another win over a conference team. And Illinois, they hold off a pesky Michigan team with a few Doug Chonkla touchdowns to only have 1 loss, and they control their own destiny in the division to get back to the Big Ten title. Rice wins in overtime. Cincinnati and Chad Barber beat Marshall in a bit of an upset. But speaking of upset, the upset of the week, Florida, it looked like they had it won after a late deep touchdown by Del Rio Wilson to take the lead, but Georgia mustered a huge drive, a 4th down conversion to Ladd McConkey, and then a Ryan McBride QB draw on the goal line, and that pushed it to overtime, where Florida actually missed a field goal right off the post, and Bobby Doucette kicked it right between the wickets to send Florida home with a loss, but they only dropped to number 3. Stanford keeps winning. USC with a good win. Overtime for Georgia State. Houston, this was a game that everyone had circled as a G5 game, potentially the season, and Houston just wiped the floor with them on the road. Definitely a disappointing game for Louisiana. And Kentucky, it took 22 points in the 4th quarter, but they got it done on the back of Hazelnut, the fullback, who has another touchdown. This man is a savage. Wisconsin actually upsets Notre Dame, who's down to 3 losses. Clemson gets a big win. Boston College keeps winning. And Texas A&M, they get another win here as well. But important to note that it looked like Eli Stowers left the game early, as King was in here for the majority of the game, throwing a lot of these touchdowns. So that might have impacted his spot on the Heisman list. Vanderbilt, Coach Puff, he gets his first win of the season. Congratulations to him. And this was game day. We knew this was kind of going to be a low-scoring game as Washington never does anything on game day. But Cal had 3 rushing touchdowns from their quarterback. San Diego State continuously just throws up 60 on conference foes, nothing new. And game number 6,000 in the SFA, Middle Tennessee State just destroyed Old Dominion as Flipper Masters had 4 passing TDs and 2 rushing. Pittsburgh taking care of business. North Carolina and Coach Sorey win in double overtime. Georgia Southern wins. Coastal Carolina, after hiring the cartel, they lose against Florida Atlantic. Western Michigan wins after a tough loss against Toledo, and that's actually all the games. So let's go over rankings now. New rankings. This is actually the final coaches poll of the season. Starting next week, the playoff committee will start. You got Ohio State up here at number 1, Tennessee number 2. Surprisingly, Florida only dropped 1 spot after that overtime loss. Boston College jumps up to 4. You got Baylor, Ole Miss, ECU, California, Michigan State, Utah. No real surprises in the top 10 there. Colorado, Texas A&M, Illinois. This was a bit of a surprise though. Houston jumping both Louisiana Tech and Middle Tennessee State. Definitely an odd choice. It'll be interesting to see how the playoff committee continues to rank these 3 teams in their rankings. Kansas actually comes in as the top ranked 2-loss team in the country. A bit of a surprise there. Arizona State right behind them. Then you got Georgia with the 3 losses. Northwestern at 2. Iowa State at 2. Miami at 6 and 2. Alabama ranked, and Minnesota both with 3 losses. And then finally Clemson. So definitely some questionable rankings there. Hopefully the College Football Committee can clean some of this up, as we know that coaches poll can be a bit goofy at times. Alright, now let's head into Players of the Week, and Flipper Masters does get the honors. 6 total touchdowns, 427 passing yards, a hell of a week for him. AAC got Mark Liu, the SFA player, 3 touchdowns. Travion Boykin, 6 touchdowns for him. A.J. McCartney, the SFA, or not an SFA player, but Baylor, he had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. And Kyle White, the almost 500 yards and 4 touchdowns for him. Huge game. And that obviously Houston sweeps after that monster road victory. Independence, Conover still at 494. And Deshaun Folsom had himself a hell of a game leading this defense in the upset over Miami, Ohio. And you had 2 forced fumbles for Fountain and 5 400 yards. Kai Milner, he didn't throw for any, but he had 3 rushing touchdowns. And then Keith Brown, 198 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. He had himself a game. And in the Sun Belt, Jake Johnson had 5 total touchdowns. We had a sack, forced fumble, and fumble recovery for Southern Miss. As far as stat leaders are concerned, Conover is almost at 3,000. And then you have 3 SFA players there, Liu, Miller, and Boykin. Rushing leaders, Rocket Sanders. And then the only SFA player, Binks McBurnfinger, makes his way back into the top 5. Wide receivers, we have 4 user teams here, but Brent Boozler is the only SFA player. And then Kansas getting up there into the fold. Tackle leaders, this is all SFA. Iowa State and Southern Miss and Tennessee, but you got Vinny Sinceri there at number 3. Sack leaders, no SFA players, but all user teams. Thompson Jr. is almost up to 10 sacks. Interceptions, we get a third man at 6. 6 has kind of been the peak we've seen so far this season, and Huffman adds or gets up to there. Kicking leaders, we all know who the leader is. Roberto Aguayo, 56 yards. I don't think anyone's beaten that this year. And let's check on that Heisman watch. Binks McBurnfinger is still at the top. Another great two-score week for him. Milner actually comes up into the rankings with those 3 rushing touchdowns. Marcus Davis moves up as well. Jalen Wright moves up, and then Eli Stowers moves down despite the injury. It is a cold world. Injuries do matter in this award. So he goes down to 5th, and they're actually saying overrated. The Heisman hopes as Stowers are fading fast. Can he right the ship? So brutal from the Heisman voters. But, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And then let's take a look at the toughest places to play before we take a look at injuries. So, those top teams, Ohio State up to 11. Miami, Ohio, they lost on the road, so that home winning streak still intact. Tennessee, Middle Tennessee State, and then Ole Miss is at 6. And guess what? They're putting it on the line at home on game day against Texas A&M. And interesting stat for you guys, the away team has won game day 4 weeks in a row. So a little BearCave tip for you there. As far as losers, you got Virginia Tech, Sandman, the Rose Bowl, and Utah State at 7 losses in a row. App State, then you got UNC and Georgia Tech. Just 3 ACC teams in here is kind of embarrassing. Just not good performances by any of them so far this year. And then as far as injuries, the worst part of the week, but the most necessary part of the week, is you have... we're first going to talk about Coastal Carolina, who once again gets hit by 2 injuries on the offensive line. I mean, let's be honest, broken ribs, a bruised shoulder. I feel like the cartel they hired did not like that performance and kind of took it out on the big men up front. So that is definitely going to be something to watch out for sure. And then as far as some more injuries, Baylor's been struggling with injuries all year. They lose another one. Their left outside linebacker tore his knee cartilage. He'll be out pretty much the remainder of the season. But good news is they will get freshman All-American Shad Boyko back this week. So a huge add for them. Then we're going to go down to Kansas, who, if you remember, Cabeldew was out for the season with that forearm fracture. Michael Ford had an injury earlier in the year, but he came back, and now he breaks his ankle. Definitely a tough one there. So they are really weak on that right-hand side, but John Bowling's coming back. So if this team wants to make a playoff push, they need all the help that they can get. And then one of the worst injuries of the week was Morvin Joseph for Tennessee. Their starting middle linebacker had a high ankle sprain, one of the bad ones that probably requires surgery, and this will likely end his season. But the good news, Jimmy Callaway, he is healing. He's questionable to return this week against Buffalo. They may save him because honestly, what's the point of playing against Buffalo, right? So their top receiver will be coming back. And then a few tough injuries to talk about here as well. Florida, obviously, they suffered that loss to Georgia in overtime, but they lost their right tackle and their 98 overall starting running back, DeMarcus Bowman, broke his wrist. He might be out for the season. If everything's on schedule, he may return for the college football playoff if they make it. So definitely a tough pill to swallow there for the Gators. And we're going to actually keep it in the state of Florida. We're going to go down to Miami, who they themselves have suffered another injury on the offensive line. A lot of teams this season have suffered a lot of offensive line injuries, kind of testing their depth. And this one will definitely test Miami, who can still easily win that division and get back to the ACC title game. So we'll see how this one shakes out. And unfortunately, the final injury we will talk about today is going to be Nebraska and Giovanni Bernard, SFA running back. We saw him a few weeks ago going blow for blow with Cale Makar on game day for rushing touchdowns. And unfortunately, he tears his quad this week, and that most likely will end his season unless Nebraska makes the college football playoff, which is very unlikely at this point. A guy who's been a backup his entire career and finally got the starting role as that redshirt senior guy, and he was having a hell of a time. He had 12 total touchdowns, unfortunate that his career will end like this, but that is just the way it goes typically for these running backs. And let me just quickly go back through. I want to make sure I did cover everything here. I want to thank you guys all for watching this every single week and participating. If you watch these videos and are subscribed, and want to see it happen in real time, feel free to join the Discord or watch the streams. The links are in the description. You don't have to coach a team. You can if you want to. But if you want to join and just see things happen in real time and talk to the coaches about stuff and ask them questions, feel free to do so. My DMs are always open. I just want to thank you guys for watching. And the next week's games will be Saturday morning. So get ready for that. I believe it is the 21st. So next week starts the playoff committee. We're in week 10. Things really start to heat up. So get ready, folks. It's going to be a wild ride. Thanks for watching.